My great-grandfather, Charles Joseph Drake, was born on the 7th of June, 1898. His parents were Charles William and Caroline Drake. He had three sisters called Louisa, Harriet, Edna May, and Emily Florence. He had one older brother called William Charles. They lived in Great Yarmouth, Norfolk. Charles was just 16 years old and training to become a wheelwright for his father's blacksmith company when the news of World War I broke. He was incredibly keen to fight for his country and signed up to join the army as soon as possible. Charles was sent over to France to fight the Germans. He was injured many times during the war and saw many of his friends killed. He told vivid stories about his time during World War I, which have been passed on to my granddad, mum, and auntie. Charles suffered shrapnel wounds many times during the war. Each time was sent back to England to recover, and then once he was better, sent back to the front line. Even up until he died many years later, he still had pieces of shrapnel coming out of his legs. Charles was operating the brain gun at the Battle of Le Cateau in northern France. It was a terrible battle on the 26th of August 1914. That day, 7,812 British soldiers were injured and 700 men were killed. Charles saw his best friend killed. He was shot by a bullet in the forehead. In another battle, Charles found himself lying on the ground on his back, with a German soldier standing over him, his bayonet fixed. He was just about to stab Charles, who must have thought he had no hope of escaping, when through the gun smoke and mud appeared a Scots guard who managed to shoot the German before he could kill Charles. The dead German fell towards on the ground, and Charles just managed to roll out of the way of the bayonet. Having saved Charles' life, the hero Scots soldier nodded and disappeared. Charles's worst injury during the war happened when the Germans released mustard gas over the battlefield. Charles had been shot in the hand and could see a piece of bone was sticking out. Because the mustard gas was so dangerous to breathe in, he knew that he had to get out of the way. He saw a bomb crater that had filled with the water. Charles was being told that mustard gas would always hover about 5 centimeters above the water, leaving a pocket of clean air just above the surface he could breathe. So he waded into the water. Charles stayed in the water for 3 days waiting for the gas to clear and the Germans to retreat. All the time he was in the water, his injured hand was getting worse and worse, more and more infected. On the third day of being in the water, the pain was unbearable, and Charles looked out the front of the crater and saw some horses and soldiers in the distance. He said to himself out of the crater, "I don't care if these soldiers are German or British, I'm going to call them anyway." Luckily, these were British soldiers who rescued Charles and carried them back to safety. He was told his hand was so infected that it would have to be cut off. Charles was given a sixpence to bite as they put him to sleep with chloroform. Then he woke up and no longer had a hand. He was given an artificial hand to wear for the rest of his life. Charles was finally retired from the army and never had to return to the front line. In 1939, when the World War II began, he worked in Great Yarmouth as a bomb damage assessor. He told his wife Nellie and two children, Barry, my granddad, and Betty, if there was ever a bomb dropped on their house, the safest place to shelter was next to the chimney. This was because he had seen the only parts of houses remaining in the northern France after World War I were the chimneys. My mum can remember Charles and his wooden hand, although he died in 1975. She was very young. You can see his hand in the photograph. He always wore a Homburg hat.